Okay, so we are live. Welcome to our live home office talks on diversity in business. What an important topic, which is close to many of our hearts. It's May, and May is the European Diversity Month, and we celebrate it this year for the first time. On this occasion, let me welcome an interesting round of panelists for today's talk. We have Professor Dr. Isabell Welpe, who holds the Chair of Strategy and Organization at Technical University Munich. So Isabell is author of a recent study on women in leadership. Welcome, Isabell. Hi. Also, we have Mercedes Alonso, who's Executive Vice President for Renewable Polymers and Chemicals of Neste Corporation and member of the Neste Executive Committee. So,
Hello.
welcome. Hello.
Thank you.
And also a warm welcome to Sucheta Govil from Covestro, who is Chief Commercial Officer and member of the board. Welcome. And
Thank you,
by the
Petra.
way, in this week's issue of the German magazine Stern, Covestro has succeeded in a public poll as one of the best diverse employers in chemical industry in Germany. So congratulations, Sucheta, for this.
Thank you to all of you. We wouldn't have succeeded without the efforts of everybody, not just within Covestro, but also the industry, the larger industry, I have to say.
Right. A quick recap for our viewers on all channels. So it's all live today, and you can type in your questions and comments in the commentary field on your channel. So we will answer your questions then live here during our talk. And so please go ahead. And if you want to join in during our talk today, you could vote now during the show via slido.com. So we have set up a slido.com questionnaire for you, and we will come back to your results later on. So our question to you on slido.com is, what comes to your mind when you think about diversity in business? What comes to your mind when you think about diversity in business? You can go to slido.com and you can type in the hashtag HOTDIV, so HOTDIV, and you're right in, and you can send us your commentaries there, and we will come to that later on. So let's start today with a really old school picture which we found, and which is really describing the situation a long time ago. It was a familiar business situation, right? And today we are only women on this live panel, which is still a rare picture in industry, though. So what comes to your mind, Isabell, when you see this picture?
It's what comes to my mind is that it's an image of the past, and even though there's only men and they all wear these gray suits, I would ask myself if something worse is going on, and that would be if they all actually think the same, if there's no diversity in their perspectives on the industry outlook, the industry development, because that would really mean that it would be a bad development for the business, right? So that's my question when I see that picture. Okay, they all look alike. That's funny, but okay. But do they all think alike? And if so, that would really be bad, and they would need some more cognitive diversity.
Right. So that's a good start into our conversation today, into our discussion. So let's talk about the importance of diversity in a corporate culture, and to raise awareness against bias and to encourage action for equality. So my question to you is, why is diversity still an issue, and what do you feel is the importance of a diversity and inclusion agenda in a company? Sucheta, what do you think about this?
Yeah, Petra, and I hope you can hear me for a start.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Petra, the fact that we still have to ask this question, why is diversity important, and related topics, underlines the fact that it is important. It isn't business as usual. And if as business, if as countries, if as people solving many conflicting issues with conflicting choices where there's no easy answer, then I think it's not efficient to not go for the total talent pool in the market. It is not negotiable that we go to only limited pools of capability and talent. It is not negotiable that we ignore or even have reasonable excuses to ignore that creativity, conflict resolution, economic value, as well as social and human capital is enhanced through inclusion and diversity. So for me, it's a critical topic. It's something I won't rest on till we get to uh, the right levels and the right impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Mercedes, would you underline this, or do you have a different view on this? There seem to be some connection issues right now. So are you back? Yeah, you're back. Right.
Yes, sorry.
Great. That's all live. I mean, this is live.
Exactly, the home office life. I'm not sure if you had any question for me, Petra. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So no, I was just coming back to this. So the diversity and inclusion agenda in a business surrounding. So how important is this for you?
Yeah, I think that as you saw in this picture before, although it's in black and white, I'm afraid that we still see a lot of room for improvement in a diverse and inclusive organization. I think in companies like ours, we see a lot of progress in the last few years. And true diversity should be looking at a 50-50 equality between genders, looking at having also in the room people that have different experiences, different backgrounds than the one that we have ourselves. Because at the end of the day, diversity, we have seen that it has both the advantages of reflecting the society that we are in, and also a business advantage. It's what really help us to see different angles, to be more aware of able to address those.
Right. I mean, we have some really good insights we could gain from this study Isabell and her team did recently. So there are some statistics in this. So the larger the company, obviously, the lower the proportion of women at the management level, which is a strange relation, right? But unconscious bias could be a possible explanation for this. That means discrimination of employees because of their gender, of ethnic background, of age, or their religion. So these findings were put into a wider context in Isabell's study of TU Munich about women in leadership. And Sucheta also took part in this study. So what are your personal experiences with unconscious bias in a business surrounding? And are there any good strategies against unconscious bias, Isabell?
I guess my experience, both as a researcher and personally, are that I have been, everyone and I myself have been a victim of unconscious bias, being stereotyped, but I've also been a perpetrator, stereotyping others. It's very much in our nature. And I think the one line conclusion from all the research and experiences is, unfortunately, if you have a brain, you have a bias. And so I think, we need to set up some conscious against the unconscious bias, some conscious efforts, preferably being rooted in structures, processes, cultures, things like that, in order to counter biases we have, because biases actually impact the quality of decisions we take. And, it's the quality of decisions that determines the quality of our lives. And in organizational setting, the quality of decisions, of course, determines the fate of the company.
Are there
Yeah.
how would you judge this, Sucheta? So the topic. So did you experience unconscious bias in the past already?
Yeah, all the time. And like Isabell said, let me not point fingers. Uh, I am the perpetrator of unconscious bias, and also not just me personally, but when you're in charge of teams, when you're in charge of an agenda, also let me use the word at the receiving end of unconscious biases. And two or three things happen, Petra. The larger organizations get, I think there is a premium especially from capital markets, on how efficiently you need to run. And let's face it, when you have a diverse workforce, it could be gender diversity, it could be nationality diversity, capability diversity, getting people on board does take a little bit of time. So I think unconscious biases come in to deliver their efficiency quarter on quarter, annually, etc. Especially when it comes to financial metrics, but even the ESG metrics that we talk about today. The second bit is that I still hear, and that is such a tragedy. Um, will diversity reduce the capability factor? And it sometimes amazes me why this question exists, because we are hiring for capability, we are hiring for specifications of a job. That job has specifications to do with attitude, skills, knowledge, experience. And if we go down that, then that question should not exist. When we also recruit people into the company, unconscious biases exist. And here, maybe, I do apologize for it. I get narrow focused and take into account one aspect, which is gender. I could broaden it as well, but let me stick to gender. Unconscious biases exist, and I've been in the sharp end of selling in small markets up country where people would say, "Oh, she's expecting a child, maybe she cannot travel." And the unconscious bias in this case is perhaps a positive unconscious bias. Somebody is being a little bit more concerned about me. But the fact of the matter is that that has already penetrated into a decision which may or may not be the right fact, or to do with follower spouses and trailing spouses, to do with mobility, or what we call the hard jobs and the soft jobs. A particular job is only suited to a particular gender, and I won't say which one is which. So, yes, unconscious biases do exist. I'm also a perpetrator, but I have to work very hard, and I encourage people up and down to also work very hard to get rid of preconceived notions and biases, and get into conversations with a far more open bent of mind.
Yeah, great insight. So Mercedes, what's your experience there? Did you remember similar situations?
Many. I think that as a woman and also as a Spanish person that has been working also outside of Spain for all my career, you just pick one, there's always something that we all have experienced. And like Sucheta was mentioned, even some well-intentioned ones where they think that they are doing us a favor in a way, considerate or something. Um, I was thinking about the topic, and also, as you say, in corporations, the fact that this is a huge change, that if you look at that picture again that you show at the beginning, there were no women and no other diversity in that room. And today we are throwing, is really pushing towards having a much more balance in that
There
room.
it's again, the picture.
Yes, exactly. It's a huge change, and it doesn't suffice to put policies that we say we are an equal opportunity employer and so on. It needs to be clear that we need to make it thicker through the whole organization. So we as leaders, as women, as men, and can be mentors, can start looking what is behind the scenes, because it's clear that this is a societal issue and it's not just only, I mean, the companies and the environment reflects what we have in society. And some of those unconscious bias that are very difficult is to put you into that box of we do have children and women are still going to be carriers, hopefully for a long time. And that doesn't mean that it has to be our problem only. That's about how the family manages, how also companies help us to come back to certain jobs, how do we manage our career, and how we also adapt to the fact that we as people, regardless of which gender or any other diversity factor we have different stages in life at which we want to do one thing or another, and we need to be able to combine it. And as companies, we need to look and dig a bit deeper, and we as leaders and as managers of our teams need to also look at the individual and see how can we adapt. And to Sucheta's point, that's not efficient. That's not the way that it can work like a clock. It takes much more work and effort. And I still think the reward totally overcompensates for that effort.
Absolutely. So we have some great viewers out there. They're sharing some commentaries already with us. So Esther Chua, for example, she really agrees with your findings about unconscious bias and what you experience yourself. So that remembers me. So please use slido.com hashtag HOTDIV to share your views with us. And you could also always type your questions into your platform there, and we will see it and we will answer your questions or we will share your commentary. So please be aware of this and follow us. Yeah, great. So there are some statistics that show really that a high female quota in management position have a positive effect on the social and ethical focus of a company culture. And you just mentioned this, Sucheta and Mercedes and Isabel as well. So what are your personal findings then about female leadership? Do you think that diversity can trigger more sustainable business in the end? So it all leads to a certain strategy, Mercedes? What do you think about this?
Absolutely, and I've been reading a lot. I'm very interested in general about gender and all kind of diversity and inclusion topics. And one of the things, for example, there were observations that, as you say, it tends to show that we have better performance in certain areas when you have a more diverse team. And one of the articles from the Harvard Business Review was pointing to the fact that maybe when they have had women in the C-suite, there is less discussion around risk, and it's much more looking about creation, transforming, launching. So it almost is morphing from a risk-taking approach towards a communicative and a more collaborative and working in transformation. Whether this is only, whether it is coming, I got lost again on connection.
Yeah,
So
but
whether
now
it
I'm
is,
back.
yeah, and I was just also thinking that it's maybe it's not only because you have women in particular, but it's because you're really bringing the different perspectives of different people. And I am sure that whether it's more women and more different, minorities or other kind of diversity factors in the room, we will continue seeing that quantified effect.
Isabel, what do you think? Is there a link between more diverse teams and the ability to really set off a certain strategy for a company, or do you think there's no connection?
We see lots of correlational connections. But as we all know, correlation is not causation. But so the things, a lot of good things tend to occur together in companies, such as companies that have more diversity are also perceived as being more innovative or are more innovative, in fact. But it's not causal, because in order to determine causality, you would need to do a field experiment. And so far, there haven't been any companies volunteering to do a field experiment. If there are any, please let us know. But you need to interpret that. And so what that points to, I think, is that there are third explaining factors that influence both diversity and innovation, and perhaps, as you pointed out, sustainability. And so it could be a general culture that is supportive of both. It could be a board that has sort of understood the sign of the times, and therefore we see both indicators rising, even though we cannot establish a causal link between them.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So that might be then effect of your coming studies, or maybe you're going a little bit deeper into
There
this.
are many studies, really. I mean, I think the few experimental studies, one is done by Anita Woolley and Tom Malone, where they do an experiment where teams solve problems. And there it turns out that the teams performed better the more women were on the team. But then they looked deeper into the results and found that the explaining factor was social sensitivity. So if you're facing a complex problem, obviously you're going to do better if you bring every member of the team into the conversation about how to address and solve the problem. And it was so that the higher social sensitivity in that study was correlated with female members. But really the decisive factor is the social sensitivity for the performance of the team.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I see here quite good commentary just coming in from Christoph Bünger via LinkedIn. So he's pointing out something. He's pointing out that different perspectives affect the work of any team, certainly also the management board. Yeah, something we could underline, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes, Christoph Bünger.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
totally agree. And
Right.
Petra,
Yeah.
Petra, for me, diversity or is not a cost; it's an investment, and that investment pays off. I think people just need to get it and thereby commit to it. It's like any other investment. There are going to be initially the efforts getting in people on board, listening to them, getting the different views towards a common problem, and then harnessing that dividend and making sure it pays off. So I repeat, for me, it's an investment, it's a necessary investment, and the more we delay in making that investment, the more we adversely pay for it.
Absolutely. So that gets me to the next point and also to the topic, at least of our talk today. So really coming to the business or coming to our industries, and also Neste and Covestro are in very traditional industry surroundings. But Sucheta, we have some really great pictures. So yesterday you met one of our female site managers of Covestro in Dormagen. We can see here, we had a great meeting yesterday. And obviously, what tells what do you remember about this situation yesterday? So what is so special? What should we highlight?
Yeah, so Petra, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure everybody can see the picture, but it might just get loaded on. Um,
Yeah, it's
but,
okay.
yeah, but as I talk, and maybe if the picture is there or not there for those who have better connections than myself, I think in industries such as the one where Covestro operates in the chemical industry, historically, and I do know it's changing, historically, the operations or the workforce point, because of various factors, did mean that we were attracting less women into it, and then also being able to retain less women for various factors. Let me not go into history, but I have to say, when I visited Dormagen yesterday and Inga took me around, as well as earlier in Leverkusen, where Suzanne Bocholt took me around, I have to say what was just, yeah, and that's me with my face totally covered by the mask. You can
Yes.
hardly see that, and
Yeah.
that's Inga in the picture. What struck me was Inga and her team all had very, very different perspectives, yet towards common issues and problems, and with similar levels of desire to succeed today and in the long run. And it was this diverse view. It was a combination of empathetic views and technical views. It was a combination of visual spatial skills and much more linear thinking, sequential skills that really enabled this site in particular to have zero recordable incidents in the last 3 years. I mean, that is incredible. And I do believe that that is a result, yes, of a highly capable team and also of a highly diverse team. So I must admit, people like Inga are a poster child for encouraging women towards roles like this, but also to say that yes, we can make an impact and we should make an impact.
Absolutely. So this is a great insight. Thank you for sharing this from your talks yesterday. So, and in regard to this, actually, we got a really good question from Gan Angat Singh Maini on LinkedIn. Actually, he's posing a question to us, and there is a saying that diversity is being invited to the party, whereas inclusion is being asked to dance. How do you drive inclusion in C-level and mid-managerial level?
That's a great question. I was also reading that now in the chat, and
Yeah.
I think pretty much like also what Sucheta was saying, I've been seeing through all my career super strong women in all kind of jobs. So that's myth of us not being able to be engineers and wearing the helmet and managing manufacturing. But this is exactly the point that also that you are making also, Gunan, that the coming to the dance, coming to the party has been always said there were not enough women. Now we do have also more. It's about being in those roles and then being able to enable to work on those. And that's the part that I see differences also in companies, that it's not about having a certain quota field and just ticking a box that you have people here and there. How do we really ask them to contribute for their experience and knowledge, and not asking them to become just a copy of what we are? And I think that you had also some pictures where you show, typical women, but with a suit and a tie. It's not about having people and giving them the opportunity so that they fit in. It's about us as companies and as businesses and as managers to ensure that we also start listening differently, that component that they bring. So how do you drive the inclusion? I think that it really starts by listening to realize that it takes more time to capture that different opinion, but it has a lot of richness. I see it myself when I work with some of the people in my team that have a similar background on companies that we have worked with, that we know that kind of industry. We understand each other much faster. We come from that same culture. And we do have colleagues in our team that have a completely different background. So it's not so easy, but that's enormous reach, because we start, it opens our eyes to things that we had not thought about, that we had maybe experienced but brushed off, and it helps us to be better and to advance more. And especially in topics like now sustainability, it's key and it's important that we see these different angles that we bring from different industries and different perspectives.
Right. We just see here so that Jared Koch is really answering to this also. This makes me think of the differentiation between tolerance and acceptance and steps towards active encouragement. So thank you, Jared. Absolutely. This is why we talk today. This is hopefully
tolerance and acceptance, right?
How can we advance these topics also in society and in business? So thank you for sharing this. And let's take a quick look at the Slido poll right now. So there are some great some great commentaries of you. So what comes to your mind when you think about diversity in business? So you mostly think about gender equality, but also about a buzzword. Yeah, which is true, because sometimes there's just talk and no action behind it. So absolutely interesting. And please go on voting. So there are also some other good, like emotional support, inclusion, open-mindedness, internationality, colors, mental health, different backgrounds, creativity. So yeah, would be great if you join in and let us know what you think about diversity in business. Great. Okay, so actually, Mercedes, we have a really cool picture which you brought us from Asia, actually, and this is so nice. It's what do we see here? So what is it?
Yeah, this is our team also done in Singapore, and we also opened our plants in China recently, our office, excuse me. So it's fascinating to see the amount of different people with different background. And I'm also pointing here to the fact that we are looking at also the age diversity. We've seen recently how ageism is also a factor, whether in the past it was the difficulty maybe to have younger people achieving certain roles. Now we're seeing how more senior people are having just difficult to stay in a job and continue contributing when they are very happy and able and capable to do so. And so this was one of the pictures also which show how, regardless the fact that we are a Finnish company that is working and operating in Singapore, and we have people from all over the world, it's a really enriching experience, and it's a success story how we are all driving sustainability together. And in the 8th of March, we was Women's Day. We had a small video of 5 of our leaders, women in Asia, and they were talking exactly about that, about not only the diversity that we bring, but how we're having an inclusive environment that is really helping us to achieve our sustainability goals. So it's a nice photo.
Yeah. Yes, that's great. Isabell, what comes to your mind here? So your study mainly focused on German companies, right? So do you have any experience then also if you look about these inclusion topics on a more international, on a broader scale?
The results are very similar in kind all over the world. They sometimes differ with regard to degree, but the general tendencies, the differences we see in the correlations, they're very similar in all countries. And that's something interesting about stereotypes, gender stereotypes in particular, that they're really hard to change. You know, they persist through revolutions, when societies change completely, through war. Gender stereotypes, you know, stay the same more or less. We've seen some changes and developments, but they're really rather small in comparison to some other changes we've seen in the world and in stereotypes.
Interesting findings. Thank you. I wouldn't have thought about this, that it's so similar looking around on a global scale.
Well,
Thank you.
even in Scandinavia, I mean, if you want one measure, you know, you can. I think if companies ask me how we assess this, I say, well, just make an anonymous comparison and evaluation on payment schemes and resources people that belong to different groups have, because it sort of comes together, right? Or you measure promotion times. You know, how much time does it take for someone who's equally qualified, but maybe, you know, one is from Sweden and the other is from Denmark. You know, do you see any differences there? And you can usually measure because the amount of stereotypes and the lack of inclusion will show itself in these sort of harder resource allocation choices.
Right. Actually, do you think that more awareness is needed through internal initiatives on a corporate level, especially when it comes to equal opportunities for employees of diverse backgrounds? So what could we do about awareness in this, Sucheta? What do you think on an internal scale?
Yeah, so I believe that it's never enough to stop awareness building, because the environment continuously is changing. So, you've got to keep moving. And I believe the awareness is to do at all levels, the inclusion aspect, and make people's eyes open a little bit as to both the positive and negative impacts that can take place if you're not inclusive. And the second bit, of course, is also at various aspects on recruitment, retention, and growth of individuals. And that can be all elements of diversity. And let me, tell you, people keep asking, does it make business sense? And I have a couple of examples. If you recall in the paint industry, uh, there is now sort of a do-it-yourself part of the paint industry, and there is a part of the paint industry which goes through professionals, painters, and all of that. The reason why the do-it-yourself industry really took off and is now a large proportion wherever you go in the globe is because in the post-war, or during the war and in the post-war period, you had to rely, the men were away fighting the battles, and you had to rely on the women for home improvement. And that's the time when smaller paint tin sizes, many colors of paint tin sizes, more dilute paint came out, and these were these women who could then be employed to do all these jobs at home. And that industry has superbly taken off. My God, what a way to harness both business growth as well as the creativity, and what some might think is the weakness, to do with strength and stamina. But that weakness of strength and stamina is actually turned it around and spawned off a whole different industry. So I would say that it's a question of awareness, of getting people to also do that mental shift and not have biases only related to traditional strengths and weaknesses, and say, what if this was to become a strength? What else would it cultivate?
Mercedes, do you have a personal view on this? So, in your experience, so how did you manage about also in your teams to raise awareness about this topic?
Yeah, thank you, Petra. I think two parts. The one is that we still need to bring more women to the conversation. We do not have equality, and it's the same if you look at other opportunities to increase the diversity, not only on gender, but looking at very pragmatic solutions, because I'm a very practical person. If you get to a recruitment situation where you have 10 candidates and 9 are men and 1 is women, then you know that is almost not a chance for that person to get the job. It's just too different. So we can do practical things to demand that we have different people that will be 50-50, or that you really expand that pool and you make a conscious effort to address the gaps that you have in diversity. And then once that you have the team, which is what the people were saying in the chat, then you need to invite them to dance. You need to be able also to see that we are all different. And talking about personal experiences, I did talk to several of my colleagues. I do have often chats and these one-on-ones. So if you have children, then maybe you do appreciate that people put meetings at certain hours that allow you to go and pick them up or not. And this is valid for men and women, by the way. But if you do not have children, you are not the one that is only going to have the dog hours that you are getting the meetings when the others don't because they have a family. So really being able to manage individuals with their needs and their requests. And this is not about maternity. I might want to take a time out to study or to take care of family or just, I don't know. And really understanding our employees and their needs, and we do have the ability to do that at the different levels. It's important. And talking about your comments about our own experience, I've been a young mother in a company and in Germany where I was extremely surprised about the lack of childcare and child support, thinking that we were much more advanced. And at the same time, I had fantastic mentors and bosses at the time that enabled me to still explore and see if I wanted to go back into work after maternity or stay in there. So it's a combination of empowering your people to be able to say and tell you what they want to do and what they don't want to do at which time of their lives, not making the assumption, but really having the dialogue, and also enabling that we have more people in that pool so that we do have that diversity, and we need to manage that actively.
Mhm. Right. So there's a good question coming in from Saskia. So Saskia is sending a question via LinkedIn. What do you consider most important about diversity management in times of crisis? And actually, we could see this anywhere around. So in terms of actions you can take within your company. So is there any relation about this? So are crisis times to foster diversity or not? Isabel, what did you see in your
In
study?
any case, smart companies are aware that in times of crises, people they would have loved to hire in boom times but couldn't get their hands on may actually be available. So I think it's always good to be a bit anti-cyclical in hiring and seeing if any talents are leaving corporations because of times of crisis, and then hire them yourself, because they'll put you in a much stronger position once the crisis subsides, and they always do. And the other interesting research result is that, generally, if you present people with the same CV, the identical CV, but you put a man and a woman on each of the CVs, in normal times, with equal qualification, people will perceive the man to be a bit more competent. But in crisis situation, that actually reverses, which is quite interesting. So you can put the identical CV in front of people and ask them who would make a better CEO, and then more people pick the woman. And the reason is that in crises, the stereotypes that we hold about what constitutes a good leader change. And in crisis, it becomes much more important for leaders to be able to manage emotions, difficult times, difficult transitions, taking on responsibility for things that go wrong, and talking a lot to emotionally engaged people. And people think, again, it's a stereotype, it's not backed up by research, but people perceive that to be a better fit, the crisis leadership stereotype with women. So it's quite interesting how external circumstances influence the fit we perceive of people for certain positions.
Absolutely. So coming times of crisis, that also means times of home office these days. So then since more than a year, actually, do you see any correlation between really the ability to work for women in home office? Does this help the situation also to get more diversity on teams if you ease the working situation, let's say, or does it make also more difficult for women to succeed? What do you think?
Me?
Yeah, absolutely. Isabell or Sucheta or Mercedes, whoever wants to
I
contribute.
haven't seen any studies, but we know that stereotypes have a particularly strong impact the less you know. So we don't see stereotypes if you can measure performance accurately. For example, take the Olympic finals, the 100-meter sprint. We give the gold medal to whoever runs fastest. Now you can measure the performance in the Olympic sprint, but you can't really measure performance in management positions that well, or maybe not well at all. And the research says that the impact of stereotypes is stronger the higher any ambiguity, uncertainty about the actual performance and attribution of that performance. So the theory I have, the hypothesis, is that as home office increases ambiguity about who is working on what, that might have an impact on stereotypes, because we tend to always fill in any missing information with the stereotypes we have about people from northern Germany, or people who have brown hair or something like that.
Sucheta, what is your... Yeah, sorry, Mercedes. Yeah, please.
No, I just only wanted to add, because it's a bit related. I've been reading more related to the US and how it's been an enormous amount, an unfavorable result of women that had to give up their jobs through the pandemic because it became impossible to manage to be working from home and having kids. And I do not know if that is, very different if you have a small flat and two of you are working and two little children around, or whether you have the luxury of larger space where you can accommodate. This connection
There
is
was
not
a
so
little
good.
connection problem, but we could get you. We could get
Yeah.
you. It
So
was
the,
fine.
the point is exactly as you say, that it's also, again, it depends. If you have a family situation where both are taking equal responsibility on the house chores and the children take care and so on, then it's maybe you can see the flexibility of when do you go to the office, when you work from home. But I think that in different environments that might have become a hindrance, because at the end you see also through a lot of these reports in the COVID time that a lot of that homework has fell on women, and that has been extremely difficult to manage without childcare, without a lot of other things and the systems that we have created. So back to the original question, what we can do also as employers is to also be aware, and if there's been people losing jobs or having some difficulties, how do we help this coming back? How do we help them to get back into the workforce and not perpetuate that situation by not having them return also to work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sucheta, was there an experience about this home office
Yeah,
situation in
so,
the past
so
year?
I'll pull back a little bit. I think both Mercedes and Isabell have given some incredibly eye-opening points as far as I'm concerned. Very interesting, very eye-opening, and I would love to hear more about it. I'd like to make 2 or 3 points. One is this pandemic, Petra, has demonstrated how, on an everyday basis, organizations as well as individuals have had to make very, very tough choices. Lives versus livelihood, or safety versus just staying alive on a day-to-day basis. And many such bits. Progression of children versus ensuring that communities remain safe. And in these conflicting choices, I have 3 observations. One, I do find that the more diverse views are taken into account, the more those choices have been better handled, because there's never been one answer. And I don't make a gender differentiation here. I just think conflict resolution towards two very, very difficult choices just gets better handled when there are diverse points of view. And you've seen that across countries as well.
Mm-hmm.
The second bit which I'll say is that what the Home Office demonstrated is that the four walls of the office is a myth. The human being is resilient enough, and organizations are resilient enough to ensure that diverse workplaces, however bad they are, however small, however pokey, however whatever they are able to work. So that's the second point I'd make. And the third point I make is a little bit of a tragedy. The pandemic has been more unkind to women than it has been. And in fact, it's women and underprivileged people have suffered far more than anybody else. So more people have been pushed out, more women have been pushed out of the workforce across the globe. More underprivileged people have been pushed into situations from well earning members to poverty, and more able people have been pushed from thinking in an able fashion to mental issues and mental stress. So I make those 3 points, and we'll have to learn how to deal with it. We will, because this is not going to go away.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sucheta, and I think that we are extremely lucky to work with companies like Neste or that Covestro, that we have that kind of understanding, that we are able to work from home or from back to the office, that we are taking care of all these employees. But the work is not done. And when I saw some of the comments in the chat that some companies are only supporting women, it's definitely not. We do not want to just favor one or the other, but it's a fact that we do not have equality in the workplace in many companies. And that's why it's apparent that we are supporting certain minorities or gender equality, but it's not as a reflection of not supporting the other. It's about bringing the equality first and then continue developing everyone equally.
Right, and this is so important why we talk about diversity, right? We are not focusing on the one thing. We want to broaden our view for different perspectives. But actually, Mahish is asking from us to nail a little bit down what we think about diversity and inclusion. That's an interesting commentary. So he's asking, what is the most important part in diversity and inclusion from an organization perspective? So maybe we try to nail it down to just one key issue. What would you think, Isabell?
I think in this topic, as with any other topic where you want to change something, it's the collective and or social norms that prevail in a company. So it's one thing to ask individual members of a company, what do you think about Norwegian females? Do they do the same good work as Finnish females? But it's much more important to ask individuals, how does my company think about certain groups, because that'll tell you the social collective norms that are present and that influence. Norms are very influential, right, on decisions people take. And even I myself may realize, the Norwegians do great work. If I am aware that within my company, they're suspicious of Norwegians, then that will influence my the decisions I take and the people I mentor and who I suggest for open positions. So it's really, I think in the past, there has been too much of a focus on individuals and individual training and individual bias. We need to look at collective bias and collective norms. And certainly one of the best ways to address that is the board. I mean, everyone looks up to what the board says, and companies where board members to say, I will not accept that. I think that's a very strong signal that will influence collective norms like that.
Thank you. So coming back once again, as we are coming closely to the end of our show today, of our live talk. So once again to Slido, maybe let's take a quick look. So what comes to the mind of our viewers when thinking about diversity? And this is it's gender equality. But still the buzzword is there, and I hope we can do something against this today. So this is not just a buzzword, this is something real we are working on. And this leads me to my last question, actually. So what needs to change in the next 10 years? So what could we change also in industry, in business? And one major topic is, of course, awareness. We've tackled that today already. And at least I can add from the Covestro perspective that D&I is an important topic which needs own reporting. And this is why there is an own diversity and inclusion report on a global scale is coming up in May, which is really doing transparency, giving transparency to all activities, which is giving a value and appreciation for activities, and delivering a broader view for new ideas. But still, so what needs to be done. And actually we have a very good commentary here. True, as a woman, it becomes very difficult to manage the housework and office work, especially when the couple is working and maids are not available due to pandemic. Managers do not consider this fact. They want the same productivity during such. Well, we've tackled this already during our reflections about home office and the difficulties for women in a family. Thank you for this commentary anyway. So this is important fact. But coming back to our last question, so what needs to change in the next at least 10 years in business running? What do you think, Sucheta?
I'd say it's the collective desire to make that change, the collective appetite to make that change. It's not one person's role, it's not one organization's role. As Covestro, we may have made progress. You talked about being acknowledged in the German audit on diversity. Our diversity report is coming out, but it's not enough to just do it. It is the one thing, the single one thing which needs to change is a collective appetite to want to make the change and make the change happen. It's not enough till it's enough.
That's a great word for the close ending. But Mercedes, what do you think? What needs to change from your personal perspective in the next years?
Yeah, I think that is extremely linked society and corporations, if you want to. So we are all mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, husbands and wives or partners and have children. And starting to look at equality also on that side is going to be super important if we want to have that balance and the work and private space. And I do see it with my kids. I see it with the family, with our friends and with my colleagues. And that's changing. And we need more of that and more consistent and across the world. And then at the same point is what somebody saw it is not only bring us to the party, but ask us to dance. When we are bringing this diversity, it needs to be clear that it doesn't happen on itself. So need to continue working towards that. Don't take it for granted and not just think that once that you have them in place, then you're done your work. It needs to be managed, it needs to be promoted and encouraged and nurtured. And I do hope and I do see that companies like ours are definitely working on that very, very intensive. So I'm an optimist. I think in 10 years we will be definitely much better than we are now.
And Isabell, from a science perspective, is there anything you would like to highlight?
I think maybe to think about the link between diversity and performance. You asked this earlier, so I think what companies, as cities, as nations, need to be able to attract what scientists call the creative class, which is the class that is made up of people, knowledge workers, IT people, anyone who is able to be creative and in that sense disruptive of existing business models, thereby enabling companies to break into new markets and develop new business models and products. And this creative class is very mobile, and the creative class values individuality, meritocracy, and above all, they value diversity and openness. And so any company, city, or country that wants to attract the creative class, I think, should send out the signal: non-standard people are very welcome here if they have to bring something to the party. And there's strong evidence, empirical evidence, that when you attract members of this creative class, you'll be doing exceptionally well. Actually, I've made it my mission to make Munich more attractive for the creative class, and we do great in many aspects, but we could send stronger signals that non-standard people are very welcome in Munich and Bavaria.
That's such a nice, that's really a call for the ending. And we've just seen this nice picture of really diverse and non-conform people who needs to join industry and business to make us as innovative as possible.
Exactly. It's not so much about how they look, it's about the way they think. You can't put the way they think on the slide, but it's about, people that think and that have a different perspective on things, because that's what's needed. If you want to innovate, you need different new perspectives.
And I agree with Mona here. It's not about lowering expectations. It's to bringing everyone on the picture. Totally.
Cool. Thank you so much for your participation today. So I feel that was a really great talk. Thank you to the audience out there, to your comments, to your questions, and to your participation also in Slido. So thank you. And it's so important to tackle this topic again and again and again, and to set our goals a little bit higher to advance here. So thank you so much. Stay tuned for our next live streams and Covestro Home Office Talks then. And all above, stay safe, stay healthy, and take care. And bye-bye. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.